A grind for the love of the game, not for the lames or haters. Grind for the love of the game. PTJ, let's talk first year players. Play
Wow,
us.
the preseason has been strong for your Ryman.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that one I'm not like super. I almost rhymed playas with players. I was going to be like, it's for the playas, not the haters. Let's talk first
Yeah,
year players. And I backed off
yeah.
that.
That's the nice thing about having some off days. You can kind of workshop it a little bit, and it came out strong. I can see you got some extra run in on that, and so that's coming in strong. It's quite the podcast studio you're in right now too, by the way.
I looked long and hard, hard and long, to find an 80-year-old woman's art gallery that I could record in. But I found that in Pat's Place Studio and Gallery here in Goldendale, Washington. So shout out Pat Schumann, I believe, just celebrated her 80th birthday. You're a lovely woman. And it is a really nice place to record. I have a cat named Emily here. You have a lovely creature named Emily as well in your home. So I feel like there's symmetry.
Yeah, my wife. Yeah,
His wife, Emily. Yep. Well, welcome back to Projecting the Jump, everybody. We had a couple kind of summer series episodes, and we're getting to the nick, just in the nick of time. We're getting in for your weekend drafts here, leading up to next week's season opener. Nate, can you believe how close we are?
yeah. It's kind of wild how this is always sneaks up on us a little bit. Our joint draft, we had, just because the scheduling, had to do it a couple of weeks ago, and so it's which felt crazy early, and so it's kind of fun now that season's actually kind of right around the corner at this point. So cram in all those drafts and spend every single waking hour consuming content on this and crush your drafts out there.
I have been. I actually was like, when everybody should have been sleeping last night, I was walking around looking at the stars, listening to a scouting podcast on a particular lottery pick from like May. It was like pre-draft process. And I almost text you, and I pictured telling you on this podcast that I was doing that. And I was like, it's like 2:30. I should be sleeping and not listening to this marginal rotation player of a lottery team. But that's the grind. And so today,
Grind for the love of the game.
exactly. So last year, our very first podcast was rookie projections pod. So today, we're just going to attack the rookies. We're going to talk through first year players in fantasy basketball. It's going to be focused on 9-cat. We'll talk, might throw on a little dynasty nugget here and there, but what we did as far as research and preparing is your basic 9-cat redraft league. So Nate and I went a little deeper on some players than the other. Some we touched on both, but I don't see any way to avoid not starting with perhaps the player with the largest fun factor in drafts. And I think the fun factor is affecting the ADP of one Victor Wembanyama. I always just write down Wemby. I've never written down Wembanyama before. But yeah, you'd say he's the first rookie going in any possible draft? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the fun factor is absolutely true. I feel like when it comes up to your spot, if you throw him out there, you immediately are going to get all the chatter for it. It's much like Zion back in the day or whatever, but he's got to be the funnest guy to draft this year.
I've turned to that Zion comparison. It's funny you said that. I didn't write it down. But when I'm kind of thinking about paying the ADP price, or, in an auction draft, that you have to pay to get Wembanyama, it reminds me of how it felt that first Zion season. And I think that kind of painted a bit of a lesson for me. I think in the past, I got seduced by wanting to be the guy that had these fun players. There was one guy in particular, shout out Derek Kanatsu, in case you're listening. And we would just compete for these high upside guys, especially bigs. And I just got into that. And I think I'm starting to age a little bit. I hang out in art studios now. And yeah, it's not for me. I have Wemby projected to 60, 65 games is the best case scenario. Greg Popovich is starting a second year wing at point guard already, which I'm excited about, Point Sohan. But if you're going to invest a second round pick, and I think that's what you got to do to get him, there's just a lot of risk there. So I'm personally going to let others have the fun. What say you on Wemby?
Yeah, I guess my main question for you going into this, and you answered it already, was how many games do you expect to get from Wembanyama? Because and that's the question you need to ask yourself. If you expect to get 70 games, you should take him in the second round. I think that's a really fair thing to do. I'm a little bit, I think like you, I think the Spurs are going to be taking a little bit more of the slow path on this season, playing the long game. He's coming off of, I mean, this was kind of a pretty wild season for him. And I think they're going to be cautious with his health and just his overall adjustment to this. So I think I mean, you said 60, 65 games. I kind of have him more in the 50s. Mm-hmm. So once again, I think his per game stats are going to be through the roof, whereas totals are not going to be quite as appealing. I was curious. I just wanted to go back and take a look at some of these highest hyped number one overall pick guys through history, and then take a look and see what they did with their first season. How often would they live up to the hype? And so
can we start with Michael Olowokandi? Or sorry, I'm sure you were going to.
Oh, right. I mean, I actually I thought we were doing a separate pod on this. I thought we talked about the Olowokandi revisit pod.
The Olowokandi spinoff pod. I got to fly in my head. Get out of here.
Yeah. Him and Valanciunas we're just great number one overall picks. But I mean, so just, and this is purely my list. In my mind, thinking back in time, who were the most hyped number one overall picks, and specifically big men I wanted to look at. But so was looking at Hakeem, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Yao Ming, Greg Oden, Zion. So those were the guys that I had on the top of my list. I don't know if I'm missing anybody up.
Sam Bowie, you missed Sam Bowie.
Oh, sure. Well, he was number 3 overall pick or number 2 overall pick. So doesn't quite match this particular build. But, it was, first off, the most interesting thing was going through these guys' rookie years and just having like jaw-dropping like jealousy over like people that were playing fantasy basketball then and rostered them. Like, I mean, I'm not going to run through everybody, but David Robinson's rookie year, he averaged 24-12 with 4 blocks. I mean, you're like, that's his rookie year.
He was like 34 years old too, because he served an entire military term before coming over.
Yeah. Right. There was a lot of these guys that were older. I mean, Dave Robinson was 24, Tim Duncan 21, I mean 22. But it was interesting to look at those and see that more often than I was expecting. Those guys lived up to the hype, and obviously those are all timers, but they came in with hype, and so I think it was kind of interesting to think about with Wemby. He averaged in the Adriatic League last year 21-10 with 3 blocks. So it's there's precedent there, and I think there's I think based off of this, I guess I was pretty skeptical about that second round pick, but the more I was digging into this, the more that I could see it. It's and we saw it last year with Walker Kessler going. He was 64th overall, but 21st after the All-Star break. So you definitely get that. I mean, most recently the last rookie that went this high he's also a center.
It was Michael Olowokandi.
Great. It's yep. Karl Anthony Towns was the last rookie to finish in the top 25. So another center. So long and shorts, I feel like I'm with you. I think in a per game value, I think I see it. I think I kind of expect him to be in that top 30, but his totals have me a little too scared to be taking him there.
Man, hearing that history lesson, kind of going back, it gets some goosebumps going. Like, it makes you want to be that guy, because like the person who takes them, you're not like, what a sucker. You're like, respect, that guy's having more fun than me. Like,
true. And for the rest of their life, they could say, I had him his rookie year.
Exactly. You mentioned Walker Kessler last year. Would he finish 21st overall, or was that the second half of the season?
21st after the All-Star break.
And what's interesting about that is like, that he's really a 3-category player, Kessler. Obviously, he could lead the league in blocks this season, field goal percentage and boards. But Wemby, you could get the 2+ blocks, but you're also going to get at least a 3 a game. You're going to get upwards of 17 to 20 points. You're going to get a couple times. He's a total package. He can hit free throws at a high 70s clip, I think is what we got him projected out here. And then when I mentioned the 60 to 65 games, that's a ceiling case. I think, if I was to project it out, I'd have it more than mid-50s like you. So yeah, you really got to bake that in. But I tip my cap. I tip open my vitamin water to any of you who have the cojones to take Wemby in the second. That'll be fun, and I can't wait to track it.
Yeah. Have fun. I mean, fantasy is for having fun. So if you want to do it, have fun.
I love that.
Then the number 2 pick, just kind of going, not that we're necessarily going straight down the line, but just kind of is happening like this, is not Scoot Henderson, but that is actually who I'm going with. Is the number 3rd overall pick, and Scoot Henderson, is that somebody that you find yourself you expect to have on any of your teams?
He's definitely the number 2 rookie going in drafts. So in 3rd overall pick in the NBA draft, 2nd as far as rookies going, as he should. No. Again, you're getting high fun factor, but in general, I think as a guiding principle when I'm building out teams, the rookie guards in particular, even when they're special, even when they're elite, it can be really rough sledding, especially in the first half of the season. Recently we had Jalen Green, who still hasn't figured out his efficiency, but I believe you had him his rookie year, right? And just trying to ride that out as long as you could, and it's painful. I don't think Scoot Henderson's going to be that bad as he attacks the rack. But yeah, I think he has a ADP of 97. His Yahoo preseason rank is 108, which isn't bad. I think it's good value. But yeah, I'm kind of passing on him. I haven't found myself chomping at the bit to get him. But I don't mind where he's going. I think I'll leave the low efficiency, high scoring guards for others. I'd be more interested in his backcourt mate, who's just going a couple rounds prior, and that's Anthony Simons. So I'm excited to watch him play. But as far as 9 cats redraft leagues, he's not that high on my list. What about you?
I think
are you capable of being objective here? I have to ask you first.
Yeah, I think in this case, absolutely. I mean, there's no expectations as far as the Blazers go. I think you brought up Jalen Green, who's the kind of the natural comparison. Both coming from the G League Ignite, both being top 3 picks, high flying guards. So I was kind of curious to see how these G League Ignite stars stats were translating, because obviously college stats are all over the board, and it's kind of hard to get a read on it. There's different conferences and positions, but and it's a small sample size just because the G League Ignite is a pretty young thing, but just for comparison's sake, Jalen Green, his last season in the G League Ignite, he averaged 18, 4, and 3. His rookie year, he averaged 17, 4, and 3. So in that particular case, it was kind of right across the board. What did we see from Scoots last year? I mean, he was obviously 2 years in that program. His 2 years ago, he put up bigger numbers. Last year, they kind of asked him to be a little bit more facilitator to kind of build that part of his game a little bit. Right. So some of his numbers took a little dip, but his assist numbers went up quite a bit. But he averaged 17, 5, and 7, on poor shooting, lots of turnovers, but those are pretty big Westbrooky numbers, really.
You hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, I think stylistically and fantasy game wise, that's what Russell Westbrook's a pretty close outline comp for him. Early Westbrook.
Right. I mean, Westbrook's rookie year, he averaged 15, 5, and 5. I wouldn't be shocked to see Scoot do the same thing. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be kind of given the keys to the offense pretty much. The Blazers do have a fair amount of mouths to feed as far as guys that kind of expect to be playing that alpha number one role. I think I think there's 4 guys on that team that kind of expect to be the number one guy on it. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think really what you're probably going to get with Scoot is these really fat box scores. I think he's going to fill up the rebounds, the assists, the points, but then you're going to have to weather massive turnovers and poor efficiency, no threes. So I think it can work. I think it can definitely work for specific builds. Especially it can work with big man build, or if you're already punting, maybe you have a Luka or you have a Giannis and you're already punting free throws and turnovers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a really good guy to look for, but I don't think it's a lock for every build. I think he's going to hurt a number of different types of teams.
Totally. You hit the nail on the head. If you can absorb it into your build, it's a really fun pick in that range. I just don't think he offers a 9-cat skill set that I'm afraid to miss out on. I think there are other guys who are going to give you popcorn numbers like that. But the fun factor is through the roof. In our auction draft, shout out Odin Speen. As soon as he drafted him for $11, he just typed into the chat, fun. And I was like, that is that's the main thing you're getting with him, and it's going to be fun. But yeah,
I love how into the fun we are with this so far with this pod. We're pro fun here.
We love fun. And what's more fun than the Detroit Pistons? If you'll allow it, I'm anxious to talk about it.
No, maybe 28 other teams, but go on.
I'm anxious to talk about a Thompson twin. Because these are guys, fantasy profile wise, that I am excited about, at values that I'm excited about. So Ausar Thompson. Is that how we're doing that? Ausar?
I thought it was Ausar.
Ausar, yeah. Ausar Thompson, yeah. So his rank in ADP on Yahoo, or just like smack, just kissing each other. A rank of 132, his ADP is 134. But obviously that's taking into account a lot of casual leagues, public leagues, stuff like that. His rotation role is looking strong. I give it a 4 out of 5 on a grading scale. I think he's going to start out the gate. I think they're committed to him. His fantasy profile, defensive stats, the upside I think might be unmatched among rookies not named Wemby. The counting stats as well. There's a lot of upside there. The summer league stats jumped off the page. You got 14 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals a game. That's exciting. It's exciting playing along Kid Cunningham, man. I think it's going to lend well to his athletic slasher profile. Relative to ADP, he's my favorite rookie. But we got to pump the brakes. We see the ADP, like I said, at 134. So I did a kind of competitive draft with some industry folks, who kind of came across over Twitter, work for Rotoballer. And so there's some heads in there, pretty experienced. He went at the first pick of the 7th round.
Whoa.
And
just trying to make a point.
Yeah, exactly. They just want to be the guy to be like, I'm in on him all the way. I'm more in than you. And so that's the sort of stuff you see. You went ahead of Jeremy Grant. You went ahead of Tyler Hero. Went ahead of Kyle Kuzma. So that felt really aggressive. But I wouldn't let him fall past the 10th round at this point. And I think the 9th might be the safe spot for him, if you really want to get him. But yeah, he's one of these charging up the board hipster picks. The people are want to be higher on than the other guy. Yeah, so it's you're playing that game as a kid and you put your hand. So yeah, once he went, I was like, okay, cool, no problem. I'll just let the value fall here. But yeah, I grabbed him in our auction when it ended. I was able to plug him in. I was happy to grab him. But yeah, what are you seeing out of him, out of the Thompson twin in Detroit? How do you feel about him? And then if you wanted to touch on the other Thompson twin too, we'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, you're right. He's definitely is rocketing up, and he's been continuing to. The vibes out of him have continued to impress ever since he's been drafted. In the summer league, my takeaway from him in summer league was he played 2 games with the Detroit starters, or a bunch of them. Ivy, Duran, etc. And he that fit looked uncomfortable. It was, and some of that could just be summer league, where guys are just trying to all get theirs, which you definitely see. But in those 2 games that he played with the other starters, I left pretty underwhelmed from him. But then the rest of the summer league, he played without those guys, and he looked like the best player at summer league at that point. I mean, you mentioned the defensive stats, and it was just like it was pretty wild. And so far in preseason, I mean, he's locked in that starting role, like you mentioned, and I went from one of those things where I was like, okay, I'll monitor it to in our joint auction draft, you beat me to him by about 30 seconds to pick him up.
My fingers were sweating. I was like, how? Yeah, I was like, ugh.
I literally clicked on it to pick him up, and I was like, how is this even possible? Like, how did you like? I was too busy talking smack in the draft chat afterwards, and yeah, that worked out well in your favor, and I do like him quite a bit more, and I think we both do, and it's really just the fit. I think a lot more in Detroit versus his brother Amen in Houston. We touched on him in our Deep Dive Houston podcast, but really that front court is just, or back court for that matter, this whole rotation is pretty crowded there. So I think Amen, maybe he's better. Clearly, the Houston Rockets think so because they selected him higher. But there's just a lot of mouths to feed. So where Ausar, I wouldn't be shocked to see him get 30 minutes. Amen, I'd be pleasantly surprised if he was getting north of 20.
No, it's true. I want to say about Amen Thompson, he is like got to be on your watch list. I'll be checking every box score, like, because I think if he can crack north of 20 minutes, guys have been in and out of the lineup here in preseason, whether it be Tate or Tari Eason. So I think he's the kind of player that if he cracks that rotation, and Udoka sees what he can do, because he's an intangible player. I mean, he has incredible upside as a facilitator and as a scorer, but right out the gate, he's going to be able to fill passing lanes on offense. He's going to be able to, play kind of like a free safety on defense and his defensive schemes. And I could see him just being the kind of player that earns himself a role at some point. And I think if he sticks to a consistent 20 minutes in your average 12 team category league, I think he needs to be rostered, and you just need to kind of play it out. So he's the kind of guy that it won't take much of a crack of daylight for me, if I have room, to go ahead and grab him and see what happens. I wouldn't hesitate. The first time he has 10 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals, and a 3. I'm going to be trying to figure out who to drop.
Quick question for you before we move on to is, does having Monty Williams as a coach make you more excited to draft him, or more nervous because you think he's going to go with some of the veteran guys like Alex Burke or Joe Harris or Bogdanovich or whoever?
It's a good question. I think it's a really good sign that he came out and declared that the Ausar Thompson's going to be starting Ausar. And yeah, that's a great sign, because, I think that he just doesn't, it's a totally different situation than he had in Phoenix. I would have to go back and look at some of the teams he had in New Orleans. I think they were veteran laden, like Chris Paul. Was he the coach way back when they had like Jamal McGlure and David West? But I feel like he's never had a totally like young rebuilding roster before, and he's a smart coach. I don't think he's like a Steve Clifford, like, shout out Steve Clifford, but I think he's going to cater to the roster he has, and he won't fall into, because they gave him that giant contract, one of the largest contracts for a head coach of all time. I don't think he's going to be as timid as Dwayne Casey and think he has to play. Corey Joseph's not on the roster anymore, but the veterans, just to try to keep his job. I think he's smarter than that. He has a long leash, and so I'm not nearly as worried. I guess the best way to answer the question is I'm not nearly as worried about Thompson in Detroit as I would be if Dwayne Casey was still the coach.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. So moving on, you were talking about how we're into the fun factor this year, and the funnest thing that I can think of is is to start your morning off with some good Steelbridge coffee.
Mm.
Steelbridge coffee, locally roasted, fair trade, organic coffee. Head over to steelbridgecoffee.com/PTJ. Check out their offers. It's a great deal. You get 4 pounds of coffee, and you can select some really, really dynamite basketball cards. And it's definitely the funnest way I can think of to start the day. And I think would be quite a bit funner than starting off the morning with Steve Clifford as your coach. Don't you? I mean, I can't imagine Brandon Miller's waking up being like, oh, this is great having Steve Clifford here.
I guarantee that Steve Clifford drinks Folgers.
Yeah, he probably does. He probably drinks it out of a styrofoam cup that he gets at the gas station on the way in.
Which is cool. That's actually cool.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it doubles as his dip spit canister later in the day. So that's something, reduce, reuse. But yeah, I mean, Brandon Miller, is there any chance I imagine he's sitting on a lot of he probably just missed out on getting drafted in most leagues. So he's kind of sitting there. I know Yahoo has him projected fairly high. So I'm guessing in most leagues, he's staring at you right post-draft, screaming to be picked up. Yahoo suggestions or ESPN suggestions are encouraging you to do that. Yeah. Is there a scale of 1 to 10? How enticed are you to just take a flyer on him for a week or two?
Well, it's interesting you say that. So in our league, I believe it's 71% rostered. I checked this morning. At this point, it was 68. It's up to 71.
Really? Oh wow. Okay, that's high.
Yeah, so he's among the highest players in our particular shared league that's available. In a draft that I had mentioned earlier, that those rosters are much deeper. You start 2 point guards in the guard, 2 shooting guards, 2 small forwards, 2 power forwards, and then another forward spot, 2 centers. So it's much deeper. So actually, I did draft Brandon Miller recently. So I'll just start with his rank right now is 177. His ADP is 131. I think that discrepancy could have a little bit with points leagues and Yahoo driving that because he's a better points leagues player.
Good point.
But yeah, I'm not jumping out of my chair to draft him. But I think he could do worse than taking a shot on him in the last rounds of your drafts. He clears what I jotted this down. He clears what I'm calling the Harry B line. Like I'm taking a player like that over the Harrison Barnes, over the Kentavious Caldwell Popes, who I think you're rostering. Like the glue guys that you just don't need to roster this early because you're shooting for upside.
For the record, I'm rostering him only because he plays on a Tuesday.
Yes. Oh yeah, the
on
Tuesday
a shallow
play.
day.
Oh,
Yeah, then he's gone. Then he's gone. Just saying that.
You say
is not a long-term KCP player.
You heard it correctly. Natron Clean said then he's God. That's what I heard. Anyways, I took him in round 14. So yeah, I think most likely that could turn into a streaming spot in a league of our size, a shallower 12-team league, but the deeper leagues, I think his upside is worth giving some time. I believe he shot 3 of 12 today. So you're going to have to absorb that. Had some defensive stats. So the efficiency is going to be a little rough. But yeah, I want to give it, I'd like to give it a month, kind of see where it's at. And I think he's fun in the later rounds, but I'm not particularly excited about him. Atrocious real life second round pick. He looks timid. When you see him on the court. Yeah, he looks like he is not ready to be the guy. So hopefully in Charlotte, the lights will be dim enough and all of the spotlights on LaMelo Ball and all his fancy, at stuff he does on the court. So, and then, you have the head case of Miles Bridges taking headlines away. So maybe Brandon Miller will realize no one's paying attention to you, dude. Just play your game. I think he is talented.
Yeah. Yeah. We all know he's one of the best facilitators around. He clearly got in trouble for that, but I'm not going to be too enticed by him, but I will give it a monitor just because that team is going to be pretty poor. And there's a decent chance that, if Gordon Hayward goes down, which is likely, Miles Bridges misses time for some reason, which is also likely. Maybe Terry Rozier gets traded. All of a sudden, there's a lot of scoring that needs to be filled, and he could just find himself needing to step into a 25% usage rate, and you just swallow that terrible efficiency because you're racking up enough stuff. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be targeting him in a draft personally.
I mean, he could end up averaging, giving you 18 points, maybe close to 2 threes, 5 rebounds, something like that. Nothing you're going to cry yourself to sleep if you miss out on, but I think he's worth a shot late in drafts.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I mean, speaking of like just rookies in general, I was curious because I went back through these last 7 years, and I wanted to see like how many rookies typically should be drafted or how many rookies should be on teams, and it was completely non-linear. I mean, you'd have years where there'd be like one rookie, and then 2 years ago there was 7 guys in that Mobley Cade draft.
Scotty Barnes. It was such an outlier year.
It was tremendous. But in general, there's been 4 to 6 guys is kind of what the average is. Kind of averages about 5 that come in at the end of the season ranked within the top 20, or sorry, top 120.
Gotcha.
Which is more than I was expecting. I don't know if that was Jives. I know you're a little bit higher in rookies in general than I am, but that was a bigger number than I was expecting to see. So I think it's helpful when we're assessing a lot of these rookies here to just kind of realize that, okay, like there is a lot of these guys that will end up being on your team, even if they maybe don't seem like they were going to be.
No, it's a good point. It's a strong point. What's exciting about this rookie class, Nate?
Michael Candy.
That's a good default answer. That's my default. No, there's a lot of glue guys, man. There's a lot of guys who are going to end up on our glue guys pod. And if you don't mind, I would love to talk about some of them.
Please do. Let's glue away.
So there are definitely some players where the disparity between where Yahoo still has them ranked and where they're going in drafts, so their ADP stands out as an opportunity to make sure you have these guys in your queue, make sure you have them on your minds, make sure you know how to spell their names. So one of the guys is jumping out to me, and I took him in that draft I've referenced a couple times with my second to last pick, is Bilal Coulibaly.
Oh, Coulibaly.
Bilal Coulibaly. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. So he was actually a teammate of Wemby's on the French national team. He started on the junior squad, and they eventually called him up. So he's a 6'6" wing with a 7'2" wingspan. He was a super late riser in the draft process. He ended up going, so he was mocked, before the draft in the 20s, and then there were some whispers that he could potentially get into the very late lottery at a highest chance. He went 7th overall to the Pacers, who then flipped him to the Wiz for Jarris Walker, with 2 seconds going to Indiana in that deal. So I was kind of intrigued by him. He has the outline of, honestly, like Ausar Thompson, as far as the defensive stats. And the biggest deal as far as role is he could be starting right out of the gate at small forward. He started the preseason opener along with the 4 presumed starters, Tyus Jones, Poole, Kuzma, Gafford. And I think if he gets 25 plus minutes, we're going to be looking at a must roster player in 9 category leagues. So I watched some film on this guy just to get a feel for him. He's really more of a slasher and a finisher on offense. He did average nearly 5 free throw attempts in 30 minutes over 4 summer league games, which shows he can get to the cup, get contact, get to the line. He was sneaky good in the pick and roll as a decision maker and a ball handler. He's not really good at finding cutters or shooters, but out of the pick and roll, he has a little creativity. So I think long term, he could become a decent passer. He needs to improve as a shooter. And attacking the lane, he can get tunnel vision a little bit. So he needs to rein that in a little bit, but it's the defensive stats. Listen to these two, the combination here. So in summer league, he had 2 steals, but 9 blocks. But in 3 preseason games, he had 3 blocks and 10 steals. So I'm just imagining the outline of a player, a ceiling for this guy. And I don't know if he'll get there in his rookie year. You could be looking at 2 blocks and 2 steals from this guy. He had incredible timing as a shot blocker on some of the tape I was watching from these games. Just very patient. So yeah, I'm intrigued, really intrigued. So talking about range and drafts, I took him at pick 179 of that 12-team category league. It was last Friday. So about round 15, second to last pick. And I went back and looked. So I took him one pick after Sadiq Bey, and right after went Jonathan Kaminga. It was a similar upside shot. But again, I mean, this guy could be starting. He's been a steady riser. He went from 15% to 18% just in the last couple days. So again, I'm taking him over veterans like Harrison Barnes, Quentin Grimes, Kelly Oubre's of the world. Kelly Oubre
Going
shot.
over the Oubre. Wow.
I'm looking to take shots on guys that might have a sizable role. And we can see what we have from him, and then we can kick him to the curb. Honestly, he's the rookie version of Rocco, who's there's been some reports that he might start. He has started at power forward in some of the preseason games. So I look at him like that. If he ends up as the opening night starter, I'm going to give him a month, especially on a deeper roster. So I'd say around round 13, look for this guy. Look for Bilal Coulibaly.
Oh, that's a fun one. I was hoping that you were going to bring him up because he has been shooting up, and we know Washington is a really thin team, and they're definitely going to be in need of defense. So
yeah,
you could definitely see him getting started and just kind of they got to figure out what they have with them, and
like, what do they care? They don't need, like, a lot of teams might send them to the G League. Exactly. I mean, they have the ultimate tank weapon in your Jordan Poole, who could lead the league in scoring and lead his team to 22 wins, and that's going to be fun for fantasy. But yeah, I think on a lot of teams, this guy wouldn't even crack the rotation. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was their starting small forward.
I like that. Yeah, it's interesting. There was quite a few of those kind of like small forward, power forwards that went around that same time. You mentioned Jarris Walker, who I really like long term. I don't know if I like him as much this year. The guy who I do really like in that kind of similar range, and once again, I think it's barring an injury. I don't think we're going to see anything from him, but I laid a couple bucks on rookie of the year just in case. Is Taylor Hendricks. Loved him coming out of college. Was just really tremendous. Went to the Jazz. And so he's playing in that probably power forward position, which is going to be really crowded between Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, John Collins, so on and so forth. So I don't know if he's going to get the minutes right off the bat.
He hasn't looked great in the preseason.
He hasn't. I think he has all the tools that he could put it together, though. I think he's somebody that I would just keep an eye on. And I think especially because when you're looking at these teams, is kind of you're kind of trying to project what their role might be. And you're trying to take a guess at what that team is going to be doing. I mean, last year we were probably all guilty of assuming that the Jazz were going to throw in the towel right off the bat, and then they end up being really good. They do owe a top 10 protected pick going out, and so they have a lot of incentive to tank if they wanted to. And if that were the case, I think he could get some real minutes. He kind of had that sweet combination in college of 3-point shooting and blocks. So I think if he gets some minutes, keep an eye on him. Keontae George on the same team too is the other guy that I think a lot of people are keeping their eye on, just because was a scoring whiz in summer league, and that's going to be kind of interesting. I'm curious to see if he's somebody that how closely you're keeping an eye on.
I didn't have anything on him, but I'm very interested in him because of the depth chart. I think they could roll him out, and they have played him a little point guard. And I mean, who's in front of him over there? They signed Chris Dunn off the scrap heap last year. He played very well. Taylor Horton Tucker sucks. I don't see why you're going to waste developmental minutes on him for too long.
He's only 16 years old still.
He is only 16 years old. He looks like he's 48. And then they have Colin Sexton. I think, as the season wears on, I think he's going to be a hot pickup. There's no reason to mess with him out the gate, except in super deeper formats, or if you're playing obviously in a dynasty league, rookie keeper league, something like that. But Keontae George is a player that I'm going to be keeping my eye on for sure.
Yeah, I think with those summer league preseason, my thought is always big men can struggle or wings can struggle, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if you're a guard and you struggle, I think it's going to be a tough uphill battle for you that season. Keontae George did not struggle in the preseason. In fact, he averaged 19, 4, and 5. So I think he's somebody to kind of keep a close eye on. And if his numbers his minutes start creeping up, don't be afraid to scoop him up pretty quickly.
I would say he's the guard version of Jarris Walker for me, as far as where I am at on like how interested I am on rostering him now versus keeping an eye on him. We'll touch on him real quick. I know you threw him out. We talked about Coulibaly. But yeah, he's got a rank of 225, ADP of 144 on Yahoo. He shot up from 10% to 23 over the past 7 days. And the reason I like him is because it's really clear to keep an eye on his path to minutes. You know, he has a realistic shot to start at power forward at some point. He only has Obi Toppin in his way, and I like Obi Toppin in that offense.
And I do not.
Right. I mean, I didn't end up getting him anywhere. I didn't feel the need. I wasn't pressed. It turns out some people in every room like him a little more than me, so he's not really my guy at this point. Offensively, I think he could be interesting, but I don't think long term that Carlisle's going to play him 30 plus minutes when he has this defensive minded rookie. Very friendly 9-cat profile here. I think if he can get the starters minutes and get north of 25 minutes a game, the outline I have for him: 12 points, 5 boards, 2 dimes, potential for a block and a steal, and maybe half a 3 or so. So if you have him now, it could be a little frustrating to hold at first as a rookie. Carlisle famously doesn't just roll rookies out the gate unless if their name's Andrew Nimhard. But yeah, in deeper formats, man, I'd be patient with them. Shallow leagues as a watch list city candidate. But yeah, Jarris Walker, I'd say, is similar to Keontae George in that, it wouldn't take as much as people think for him to all of a sudden be super relevant before we even hit the new year.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good analysis of that situation.
There's one glaring omission to this list, and I'm fine not to talk about it, but there's another.
I was wondering if I knew you were going to bring him up. I was going to, but I mean, like I was going to say it earlier when you said when you said Scoot was the second highest drafted in fantasy of these rookies, but it's not. It's Chet Holmgren, and Chet I actually prefer for his ADP more than I prefer anybody else. Wemby, Scoots. I think you're basically going to be getting 90% of what Wemby gives you. And
question
as far as the blocks and threes, but I think with Chet, where Wemby I expect to get 55 games. I'm expecting to get north of 70 with Chet.
Are you?
I am. Yeah. Was that going to be your question?
No, I just want to throw out. I'm trying to get like a baseline for who you would draft Chet over, because of where I've been seeing him go in drafts. Say you haven't drafted a big guy yet. Who are you taking if Chet Holmgren and Miles Turner are both on the board?
I guess that's like the most accurate comp, because you're really getting
took Miles Turner
threes right at the same spot.
Right.
Miles Turner is safer, so I'm going to take. You know me, I like safeness over excitement. But if Miles Turner was already taken and I was in, depending on my build, if I'm going for blocks and threes, I would feel pretty comfortable taking him. I think he's a grinder. Like how good is he going to be in real life? I think the jury's out on that, but I think he's going to put up some pretty nice numbers this year. I mean, he's going, what is his ADP? 51, I believe, which is a bit steep. But I don't really mind taking him about that position.
Would you rather take Chet Holmgren at the top of the 4th, or be able to wait till the bottom of the 5th and get Nick Claxton?
Now that's a really good question. I guess if there's a round discrepancy, I mean, I would rather wait and take Nick Claxton, because once again, he's a sure thing. But I think if they're going in the same round the same picks, I do prefer Chet over him. I have him ranked higher than Nick Claxton in my personal rankings.
What's funny is, so I pulled it up here. Chet Holmgren has an ADP of 48 on Yahoo. Claxton 55. But in that expert league I did recently, I actually took Miles Turner at 38, and Holmgren flew off, I think, 2 picks later. And then I got Nick Claxton at the back of the 5th round, which I feel pretty good about. I think it was pick 58. But if you look at straight up ADP, Claxton is 50th ranked player. Chet Holmgren's the 51st, and they're going 7 picks apart. But there's always someone willing to reach on Chet in your drafts. And no, I mean, I do. I love his profile. Obviously, if you listened to the podcast last year, you know me at all. You know that I don't roster Zombie Sonics. That's just kind of my. And I try to keep up on it as much as I can and get an idea of the rotation, and just hope that someone gets traded at some point. Actually, I took the Bronco Jalen Williams in a best ball draft on Underdog today, and I thought to myself, that just stays in the cabinet. That's fine. It didn't feel very good. I kind of felt a little queasy about it, but he was just the best value on the board, and I had to do that. But yeah, I mean, Chet Holmgren's fascinating. He's a fascinating prospect. It's just the stat profile is very, very unique and enticing for non-cap.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're getting. I like it quite a bit. The other center, and the last guy that I have, that's kind of probably worth talking about, is probably because he's starting this season, is Derek Lively. It seems to be a lot of the news is coming out right now is that he's going to be getting that a starting gig. That being said, he's not somebody that I am paying much attention to. I mean, the main reason is they have a bunch of other centers on that team. So yes, he's probably starting, but realistically, is he playing more than Dwight Powell? I don't know. But they also have Rashawn Holmes, Maxi Kleber still on that team. So I'm not that intrigued by him. Quick question. Yeah. You care to take a guess on how many points per game Derek Lively averaged last year at Duke?
I'm gonna say I know. I'm gonna say 8.2.
5.
Wow.
5 points, 5 rebounds.
Wow.
So he's starting. You're gonna see him jumping up all the pickups. But for me, he's strictly a block stream. I don't know if you feel any differently about that.
No, if we're assessing him objectively and not, if you remove the element of the unknown because he is a rookie, and Mark Stein, the legendary NBA insider, did report that he's the starting center, and I think Jason Kidd confirmed it at some point. Doesn't mean he'll get more than 18 minutes a game, as you alluded to. So yeah, I think if you take out the mystery of the unknown and the fact that he's a rookie, what's appropriate for him is to be a blocks and field goal percentage streamer. That's appropriate. Now, because of the fact that he's a rookie and there's the mystery box element, he went in the 14th round of that recent draft. I think what's more appropriate for him is he's a streamer. I think people are treating him like he's preemptively this year's Mark Williams. And so because, when that trade happened, the Plum Dog was shipped out finally. He went flying off the wire. So I think people think they're getting ahead of it. He was the 13th pick. They really invested capital. They moved up to get him. Did the Mavericks. Yeah, but his numbers are very modest outside of the 2 blocks a game. So, I like blocks, but I think sometimes we overvalue it a little bit. It's just one of 9 categories. So yeah, I think there's scarcity in blocks, but there's a lot more guys who can block shots this year in general in fantasy. And I don't have like a graph or anything written down, but I feel like blocks are not as hard to come by maybe as they have been in the past. So, I'm much more interested in taking a shot on Jarris Walker than Derek Lively, for instance.
Nice. Well, it's nice we finished in the same in agreement here that made this whole thing fun, which is our whole theme.
We like to have fun, despite what you might think from our deadpan delivery. Speaking of Mark Williams, Nate, I do think that it's important to mention that. So over the years, Nate and I played fantasy together for almost a decade. We don't make a lot of trades. It's not that we never trade together, but during our live auction draft, which is loads of fun, Mark Williams went to Nate for, I believe, $8. And it was one of those players where I was like, oh my God, like, you knew this is my guy. I don't think Nate was that interested in him, but I was like, and then he said something like, I didn't mean to get him. And so with my final, I played it. I had just enough money to I needed big guys. So I took Jalen Duren, Then I got Collins for $5 in Utah, John Collins, who's one of Nate's guys. And go ahead and plug him. I do want to kind of hear your take on him. But it was just a perfect swap for us. So I took Collins knowing this is how I'll get Mark Williams. He did ask about Simons. That's not happening. But I floated it over and we made it right. And that felt good. It was one of those trades that just like something went awry on draft day. It just fixed this. We don't need to try to extract every little ounce of blood from each other. We just made the swap. But I think Mark Williams, the case is clear. I mean, I like his role. And I was looking for that profile, and I like the fact that he actually is about a 70% free throw shooter. He doesn't tank you there. And you get all the big guy stats and the roles secured. But how do you see it playing out for John Collins? I know he struggled at times during the preseason. He's not been horrible, but he hasn't been great. So do you feel like there is like a 20% chance that he resurrects his career a la Larry Markkinen? Is that what you're chasing? Just give us your John Collins plug.
It was the most. First off, I've never done a trade preseason before.
Right. That's not your style at all. You play way close.
It's not anybody's style. Like how many trades happen before the season starts. It's a very weird thing, and it was like you mentioned. There was like so little back and forth. In fact, I offered you a trade and you offered it back, and I went, yeah, well, okay, that's fine. Like it's just really, I guess what it is Mark Williams is like one of your guys, and I'm not nearly as high on him. I think he is going to be good. His pathway is really great. I just think that the ceiling on John Collins is quite a bit higher. And so I was willing to take that swing at that point. John Collins, for the record, born in Utah, playing for the Utah Jazz, just, not saying that he needed extra motivation, but I figured I might as well take a swing. I think late in your draft, like just take swings, and we each kind of felt that, and it's just a matter of what fit a little bit better for our team. I kind of I didn't mind getting the extra half to 1-3 a game. I think that was really was the motivating factor for me in that trade.
Natron's a swinger. That's what we're hearing.
Hey, I'm fine with it.
Hey, we want to before we get out of here, we want to introduce a new segment which we came up with just in the 5 minutes that we talked before we hit record. Nate is a futures man. I dabble. I enjoy keeping an eye on the market, but I think for as long as I can remember, Nate has always had his finger on the pulse of NBA futures, especially teams over unders, stuff like that. So what do you like? And can you give the people a couple of choice picks, and do you have a name for this segment?
Yeah, I absolutely love this time of year with everybody's over-unders podcasts coming out and picks. I think it's so fun. And I think really if you're fine kind of having some money like tied up for a while, you can really do really well on a lot of these over-unders. I've been doing them for a number of years. I think you can realistically hit 60% of these and make back some good value. I mean, the money sits in your DraftKings or FanDuel account for a minute, but I think you can get a pretty good payback on it. So I love betting these, and my Litke lock for this one is going to be I'm hitting the Rockets over pretty hard. This one.
What's the line?
It is, I got to pull this up. I believe it's 34, which is 10 wins higher than they were last year. And so which is a pretty big jump up. But really you're talking about adding, you're adding Fred VanVleet, you're adding Dylan Brooks, you're adding Ime Udoka to a young roster that's getting a little bit older. You have Jabari Smith that looked really good in the preseason and in summer league. So I think just that alone was going to give you those additional 10 wins. But I think mainly more than anything, there is a mandate or an emphasis from ownership to make the play-in. I think that's the reason that they signed Jeff Green, and they kind of picked up some of these end of the bench guys who are willing to spend all that money for it. And they owe their first round pick already to Oklahoma City. So they there's no incentive to tank. So I think they're going to try as hard as they can to the last game to win every game that they can. So I feel pretty good about this over.
Yeah, it's at plus 100. Yeah, 31.5. That's pretty nice juice.
31.5. Yeah, this is yeah. You should hammer this. I'm gonna be. I'm putting all as commissioner. I take everybody's buy-ins. I'm gonna put all of your buy-in money on this one.
Scrolling. That's what you got to do sometimes. It's a little embezzlement. It's consistent with the theme of what we do. Looking at this, the Trailblazers jumps out to me. The 28.5. How worried are you about them pulling the plug? I just think that there's quite a bit of talent there. I think they could get to 30. I just noticed that one.
I'm smashing the under.
Smashing it. Just like Chancellor Billups is going to smash any hope that they are going to be
terrible coach. They're going to be selling off guys, shutting down guys. It's just a numbers game in the West. Every single team except maybe the Spurs is trying to make the play into the playoffs, except for the Blazers. I think that they're just going to start accidentally racking up a lot of losses, and I feel quite confident taking the under with the Blazers this year too.
Okay, so we got the Rockets over at 31.5. We have the Blazers under at 28.5. Give me one more.
The last one I have, and I got maybe you can pull up the number while you got it in front of me here, is I believe the other one I'm hitting pretty good is the Magic over.
Oh, I like that. I noticed it too. 37.5.
37.5, which is about 3 wins, I believe, over what they did last year. They kind of shut it down at the end of the season for kind of some late season tank stuff. But that's a young team that you can really expect to get 3 games better. And they have a number of guards. You kind of, we alluded to this in the preamble before we get started, but there's a number of guys that have that pop potential on that team. And so if you just get 1 or 2 of those guys that take a step up, you're hitting that pretty easy. So I feel really good about that Magic over.
I really like that one. Another one that's sneaky is Philly is still at 49.5. And what if things just kind of implode there? The East has gotten so much better. Not liking the vibes. Nick Nurse already looks exhausted at his press conferences. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, that kind of jumps out to me. And then the other one is the Sacramento Kings just can't get any respect. I know
no respect at all.
The West is is loaded, but 44.5. They were the 3 seed last year, and they have improved around the margins, if anything.
I got $15 on them winning the play-in tournament, or not the play-in tournament, but the mid-season tournament. So,
oh my god, I love
it. I'm in on the Kings. I think the lack of respect is. I think they're going to be out to prove that last season wasn't a fluke, and I think that's a good pick too.
They just have incredible chemistry. I just like the symmetry on that team, and the vibes are the opposite of the Raptors or the Sixers. We love vibes here at Projecting the Jump.
Bro vibes.
Okay, well that is our Let's Talk Rookies pod. Let us know how you enjoyed the Litke's locks or the over under segment. I think it'd be fun this year to mix in a little variety. We'll hit you with maybe a little DFS talk at the end. Take a look at some, I do a lot of underdogs, so we'll maybe take a look at some trends over there, and then just take a look at some of the betting markets, towards the end of these pods. So hit us with some feedback. Please remember to rate, review, please subscribe. If you mess with the X or the Twitter, and you see this podcast on there, please give it a like, hit the little button that retweets it. Any little extra stuff really helps, because we're trying to get cranked up again here. And just a shout out to everyone who's been supportive, everyone who's helped us along the way. A shout out to Sports Ethos, to Dan Besbris, Keith Cork. Been working with those guys. I learned a lot from them. They're great at what they do. So yeah, I'm really excited about the season. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. And we're going to be back recording in a matter of minutes. So just be on the lookout for another drop.
Sounds good. Look forward to get back on the next pod here in the next day or so.
I'm super excited. All right. Well, for Flyin J, this is Natron Clean. This has been Projecting the Jump podcast, and we will talk to y'all soon.
Later.
All right. Later.